Adam Booth here, Upshift Online. I have the 2021 Beta 250RR Race Edition. This is the race edition of the regular 250RR, so there's some hyped up parts on it that make it a little better for the more aggressive rider and the guy who might actually want to go racing. So the biggest difference between this and the regular 250RR two-stroke is the KYB front fork. Typically, the base model has sax fork, sax shock. The other big difference is the base model has the oil injector on it, which you pour in two-stroke oil and the bike mixes it for you. For the race edition, that does not exist, so you have to pour your own pre-mix out of your ratio right, 32:1, 40:1, I don't know, whatever you want. Mix it with your regular gas and put it in here and then you're ready to go. So other little kind of cool features of the race edition are on the oil filler caps, like this cool anodized little red treatment instead of just a black filler cap. The foot pegs are a little wider, aluminum instead of the stock steel foot pegs, and it's got a red chain block. So that makes it a little more trick, a little more race ready. All right, we got this bike brought out to us today by Rodney Smith, legend, working at Beta, brought us a fresh bike. I had to break in the brakes and go ride and get the suspension moving a little. Nothing's kind of makes you feel cooler than breaking in a brand new bike, firing it up, and feeling it kind of settle in. So we did that, bled the forks, got the brakes warmed up, let the engine go through a few heat cycles, and then went out on the trails for a couple hours. So right away, I noticed that this bike is just a little more aggressive as far as suspension setup. So with the suspension setup like this, it's a little more race edition. You feel a little bit more of the ground and the terrain through the suspension and the chassis than the stock bike. The stock bike has an open bath fork, which is much more plush and moves through the little stuff. This thing still feels good through the little stuff. It just transfers a little more of the energy in. I found that the faster I went through the bumps, the harder I came into the corners, the more the bike kind of traveled through the stroke and the better it felt. The balance was really nice on this. I was able to come out of like bumpy straightaway and into a slippery corner and get on the brakes and have the bike kind of settle into the corner evenly and then get back on the gas. Sometimes with an off-road bike or an enduro bike, the suspension's so squishy and set up for the rocks and the roots that if you get on the brakes hard in the front, it dives down, and as soon as you snap back on the throttle, it lifts back up, and that just changes how you come through the curve. It changes the geometry. So when a bike is balanced and ready to be ridden aggressive, it's really nice. So this thing was perfect for that. I could go fast and I wasn't worried about, you know, the back end kicking up or the front end diving or knifing. The other thing, through the rock beds and through the rock gardens, I started off slow in the morning and I felt a little bit of bounce, and then I just started upshifting into the third or fourth and just leaning back and going, and it soaked it up really well. And so with me on any bike, I love them on 4 strokes and 2 strokes, but I would put a stabilizer on. The last thing I need is to be going through a rock garden and thinking I'm good and just hit that one rogue rock that just spits the bars, and then that spits the back end, and all of a sudden I'm shooting off into the trees. So I like stabilizers that are set up for pretty much just a high-speed circuit where it feels like a normal bike until that huge slapper hits the front wheel or the back wheel, and then the bars slow down so I can control it. So I've spent a lot of time on 300s and 250s over the years. I've ridden a lot of Betas in the past. I've ridden KTMs. I've ridden pretty much YZ 250s. It turned into off-road bikes. I've always been a little more of a fan of a 250 for a lot of overall riding. I like the 300s when the terrain's really slow and technical, and I'm never gonna, you know, get a little more aggressive and run through the RPMs. As the years have gone on, 250 has gotten better about having more low-end grunt. This motor setup is really nice. So it's really nice off the bottom. It idles down low. You can kind of drag it with or without the clutch. And then as it revs through the power, you can ride it aggressive, but it's not like a motocross 250 where it gets going and then just snaps into the power band. This pulls hard into the power band, but it's really controllable. So as you're drifting a corner or getting on it, it doesn't want to rip out of your hands or all of a sudden wheelie and unsettle the chassis. There's a little button right up here by the gas tank, by the gas filler cap. It has a cute little sun on it and it has a little cloud dropping some raindrops. So that just changes your maps. You have 2 choices. You can just go the full normal aggressive, or it's got a mellower map. Played around with both maps on dirt roads where it was slippery and gravelly, on slower technical trails, and then just riding normal single track. Most of the time I like the normal setup out here in Idaho, but it's a little dusty, it's a little slippery. In the mud, I would definitely go with the rain cloud on the button here because it just mellows everything out. It kind of just slows down the revs, and then it doesn't rev out as far on top. So there might only be 50 cc's difference between a 250 and a 300. And yeah, the motors feel drastically different the way they ride. And what's weird is there's really no weight difference between the two, but a 300 feels a little heavier, a little more sluggish side to side than a 250, and that's just basic engine inertia inside, and that can change the whole feel of the bike and the way it handles. 250s just feel a little more flickable, a little lighter. You don't quite feel as much vibration from the motor. This motor is really good on vibration. It has a counterbalancer, so you're not really feeling much vibration. There are certain RPMs where you feel it a little more, but these aren't the engines of 10 years ago that if you ride for an hour, your fingers are buzzing and your feet vibrate. Two strokes right now with counterbalancers and stuff are way smoother than they've ever been. I was talking earlier about the balance on this bike, and I'm really happy with it straight out of the box, how fast I can ride it, how it works slow. The KYB settings on this work really well with the sack shock. I didn't really ever have any issues with kicking on it or like sacking out in the rear, and cornering was nice and consistent. Like overall, the way the bike felt was really, really nice. So the suspension settings today were just set to stock. The forks bled, sag set properly. Rodney helped us just make sure everything was dialed, have this bike out of the box ready to go. Obviously the suspension is probably going to continue to break in and change a little, and then if you change tires or tire pressure, that changes it. But overall, stock settings for what we were riding today, I was happy with. So the race edition has a great look to it. It's got some cool color schemes going on here. It's got the headlight. Hey, in a lot of states where we are right now, Idaho, it'd be pretty easy to stick a license plate on the back. Arizona, probably Utah, and then you could have this kind of racy looking bike with a license plate on the back and literally go race it and then ride home. Going along with the looks on this thing, I like the black swing arm. Beta actually equips this thing with these pretty sweet frame guards that are pretty close to the frame color, just adding to the overall look of the bike, the black foot pegs. And back to the whole possibly making it street legal, Beta 2-strokes come with the kind of Euro setup over here, which has a turn signal switch, has a horn switch, and it has a low and high beam on this, even with a flasher. So if you were going to kind of wire this up for a street legal bike, the basis is right here, and I'm sure it's not too hard to get her street legal. So overall, had a great day riding some Idaho trails. Got to ride with Rodney Smith. He was on a 200, which we're going to be doing some stuff on later, so that was pretty fun, comparing 250 to a 200, but that's for another time. Overall, we rode this bike today and had a great time. I believe the price is about $93.99. Of course, that might vary depending on your dealer and stuff, but damn cool bike. I love 2-strokes off-road, especially for trails and stuff. Motocross, yeah, they're still fun, but off-road, true off-road, hitting the single track, 2-strokes are awesome.